Our executive director, Eric Reineker's daughter, Micah, visited the Holocaust Memorial Museum at the JCC with her class this past spring. She thought it was a meaningful and thought-provoking experience and walked away with a clear understanding that people were terrorized and dehumanized during the Holocaust. She knows that racism is bad and that it is important to be an upstander. But when Eric asked her if she knew who the Jews were or why they had been killed by the Nazis, she admitted she had no idea. It's not her fault. It's also not the fault of that day's volunteer docent, who likely assumed that all visitors have at least a basic understanding of the Holocaust. After all, it's been 5 years since SB 1828 was passed, which mandated a statewide Holocaust Remembrance Week each January. But in a state where approximately 1% of the population is Jewish, even if your dad works at a synagogue, chances are you wouldn't associate the people you meet at Temple Beth-El with the faces of the concentration camp inmates we see on the museum walls. In fact, if her father didn't work here, Micah might not know anything of substance about Jewish people or Judaism at all. As Jews, we live our lives juggling multiple realities. Jewish life in a place like San Antonio is mostly invisible. I think that who we are, what we believe, and how we practice our religion is a mystery to most San Antonians. How many people mistake our red dome for the observatory down the streets? Our Jewish institutions must constantly be concerned with their security and with the threat, real or implied, of nefarious actors. We now insist on locked doors, armed officers, and membership passes because there have been too many instances where real harm has come to those who were too trusting. Still, San Antonians really seem to like their Jews. Yeah. The annual Catholic Jewish Hanukkah luncheon is always a sold-out event. We have a strong interfaith network and clear support from local government officials. Last year alone, we had visitors from 17 different groups, including church confirmation and world religion classes, sometimes coming from 2 hours away. Many people show genuine interest or at least curiosity about what it means to be Jewish. And this tracks with national surveys that report that American Jews are consistently the best liked and the most well-respected religious community in the United States. And yet, the ADL reported in 2022 that American Jews are the victims of 2/3 of religiously motivated hate crimes, despite accounting for only 2.4% of the US population. It's a 36% increase from the previous year and the highest level recorded since 1979. We're experienced with this in our own community. Anti-Semitic leaflets left on our doorsteps, casual racist comments made to our children at their schools or shared on social media, even threats against our communal gathering places. And if you're looking for it, you can easily find anti-Semitic undertones in the way people talk about or to Jews. I'm not saying this is only a thing in San Antonio or Texas. It's not. It just means that most diaspora Jews, if we want to exist peacefully in our communities, have become experts at letting go. We roll our eyes rather than correct people the second or third time when they ask about our church. We know to double check the matzah at the supermarket to make sure it's kosher for Passover. And we assume there will be at most one lame Hanukkah song at that school holiday concert, if we're lucky. Are these slights or oversights acts of anti-Semitism? Maybe not. Most likely ignorance or ambivalence. But maybe yes. And too often we choose not to speak up. This makes it difficult to tell those who wish to harm us from those who don't care one way or another, and those who don't see us as a true minority at all. Unless they've gone out of their way to express it, how are we to know who our true allies are? Though we are clearly living through a cultural moment when there is a high sensitivity for the lived experiences of people who have been oppressed, Black people, Indigenous people, Asian people, gay people, women. In most cases, Jews simply don't make the cut. When it comes to confronting bigotry and oppression, Jews don't count. Jews Don't Count is actually the title of a 2021 book by British writer David Baddiel. His thesis, that anti-Semitism is considered a second class of racism in the pantheon of isms and phobias, and that unless Jews are being physically harmed or are property damaged, most people, including many progressive Jews, don't consider the various ways that Jews are slighted, excluded, lampooned, or otherwise made to feel other to be racist at all. It's ironic, really, since so many of us pride ourselves on being upstanders. We speak out for others who are discriminated against. But if we speak out for ourselves, we're brushed off, we're mocked. Sometimes we're even attacked. During these holy days, we set aside time for introspection, time to consider how we can be more present for others and live a more authentic expression of ourselves. So we should reckon with the anti-Semitism we find around us and seriously question why so many of us are ambivalent about speaking up. Because the clearer we are about where our discomfort comes from, the more we will be able to put aside the sense that we're better off staying neutral, which is not something we can afford. As Elie Wiesel said, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So, we cannot remain indifferent to our own safety and standing, and as we continue to speak out for the vulnerable and oppressed in our midst, we should find the courage to stand up for ourselves as well. Anti-Semitism has been around practically since the beginning of time. In the book of Numbers, we read about Balak of Tzipor, king of Moab, who sends messengers to invite Balaam ben Beor, a well-known pagan prophet, to come and curse the people of Israel because he fears they will attack his nation. The story of the Maccabees, recorded in the Christian Bible, recalls how the Assyrian Greeks attempted to assimilate Jews by force. In the scroll of Esther, we learn that Haman, enraged that Mordecai the Jew would not bow down to him, plots the annihilation of the Jews. The instigating factors have varied depending on time and place, but they always represent a complex combination of stereotypes, conspiracy theories, and hatred of the unknown. We see this not only across the arc of history, but also across the political spectrum. On the left, an experience of discrimination, displacement, and destruction that is thousands of years old is conveniently forgotten. Since so many Jewish people have successfully integrated ourselves into mainstream society, we are ubiquitously assumed to be white and considered by default to be part of the system of oppression that discriminates against people of color. But we only have to look around this room or look at our own families to know that to be Jewish is to claim a multi-dimensional identity that spans multiple continents, nationalities, foods, languages, and skin colors. We are not a race, and we are much more than a religion. Yet because whiteness in America signifies influence, power, and security for so many, and because there are highly visible Jewish people who possess these things, the progressive mindset has Jews checking off that white box in every demographic study. This perspective can lead to a mindset that believes Jews are the oppressor in society, never the oppressed. Our own concerns for safety are overblown, made up, or not significant. People believe we bring bigoted behavior upon ourselves. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the modern excuse for this particular lie. And Jews don't really need or deserve special considerations or protections. Many progressive Jews internalize some of these hateful ideas, whether we realize it or not. So we second guess our right to speak out on our own behalf. I was appalled when famous Jews like Jon Stewart defended Dave Chappelle after his rant on Saturday Night Live, during which Chappelle complained that Jews control the entertainment industry. What compelled Stewart to say Chappelle's remarks were not that bad or simply misunderstood? And why did so many people laugh along with his racist truth-telling that was thinly disguised as humor? On the right, the historical traumas of the Jewish people are proof that Jews get what we deserve. Because we have always been dirty, lazy, and sneaky, we cannot be trusted, and we are powerful, rich, and controlling. Remember when the neo-Nazis in Charlottesville chanted, "Jews will not replace us"? They were referencing the white nationalist conspiracy theory known as the Great Replacement, which states that Jews are secretly masterminding the promotion of immigration and multiculturalism in order to replace Aryan whites. Jews are not trying to replace whites with Jews. They're trying to replace whites with browns and blacks and pulling strings to do so. This is what motivated Robert Bowers, who murdered 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018. He was incensed by their support of HIAS and its work to resettle refugees in America. So we occupy a combination of low and high status in the racist imagination. Which is why, whether we lean to the left or right or are somewhere in between, most of us have from time to time chosen to keep our Judaism, if not hidden, then in the background. Sometimes to get ahead, sometimes to fit in, sometimes to feel safe. For generations, we've shortened our names or changed them. We straighten our hair. Some of us fix our noses. And more often than not, we've kept our complaints and our concerns to ourselves. You know, and I know, it's sometimes hard to speak up unless it's a matter of life and death. But there are consequences to staying silent. Loss of self-esteem, loss of identity, loss of trust in the people we interact with every day. If we don't speak up, if we always go with the flow, how do we know who our allies truly are? And how will our children and grandchildren retain a sense of pride and strength in their Jewish selves? At the very least, we owe it to them to make sure people know that Jews do count. So we must support the work of our Jewish Community Relations Council. Lisa Epstein and her team are poised to speak out publicly, engage with state and local government, partner with law enforcement, and communicate with our schools. We know they have our backs when we speak up for ourselves. We're not alone. A few years ago, after the Alamo Heights High School Theater Program staged a production of Fiddler on the Roof, even making a special trip to Temple to hear about the Jewish shtetl experience, they inadvertently scheduled their fall choir concert for Erev Yom Kippur. When I pointed it out to the choir director, he sheepishly told me there was nothing he could do. What a shame, I said. You were so careful to create a respectful production of Fiddler last year, but this year, you disrespect the Jewish families in your program. I am so glad to report that somehow they found another day on the calendar for the performance. But you don't have to be a rabbi to speak up. I see those of you who are proactive in your schools, providing them with resources about Jewish holidays and Jewish practices, requiring them to hold students, teachers, and administrators accountable for discriminatory and racist behavior of any kind, including anti-Semitism. Your voices count more than you know. And I see those of you who volunteer your time as docents at the Holocaust Memorial Museum. The students, the teachers, the law enforcement that spend a day there leave more sensitive to hate, more aware of prejudice, and are more committed to speaking up. They come out changed because of you. But speaking to strangers isn't enough. We also have to engage our non-Jewish friends, especially our fellow social justice allies, in conversations about our experiences with microaggression, how anti-Semitic language, caricatures, and stereotypes are hurtful. Last year, our Temple high schoolers invited their non-Jewish friends to participate in an ADL program on anti-Semitism. I was so encouraged to see these young people share what was in their hearts and to see their peers gain a greater understanding of their friends' experiences. And we need to vocally support and participate in the work of elected leaders, especially non-Jewish ones, like Mayor Ron Nirenberg, Councilman Manny Pelaez, State Representative Diego Bernal, and State Senator Jose Menendez, who are not afraid to speak out against anti-Semitism. At the same time, we must challenge leaders who use anti-Semitic tropes in their discourse, whether it is in their rallying cries for social justice or their allusions to Jewish control. And we can familiarize ourselves with the White House's 4-pillar plan to attack anti-Semitism that was released this past spring. It is groundbreaking. This is not the first time in Jewish history that our safety and standing are tenuous. It will not be the last. Yet we do possess power to change the conversation and hopefully the current reality, juggling our multiple realities and galvanizing our influence and goodwill to speak up against bigotry and hate. We must be willing to balance our need to fit in with our need to speak out. We must find the courage to tell those we care about, our neighbors and leaders in our community, that anti-Semitism in all its forms is hateful and hurtful, and it erodes our character and our community. And we must not be afraid to remind them and remind ourselves that Jews most certainly do count. Amen.